The Haunting of the Winchester Mystery House. The Winchester Mystery House is not just a mansion. It is a maze of fear, obsession, and the supernatural. For 38 years, construction on the house never stopped, driven by the belief that if it did, death would come. The story of this sprawling, twisted labyrinth begins with Sarah Winchester, a woman haunted not only by grief, but by the ghosts of those killed by the very thing that made her fortune. Sarah was the wife of William Wirt Winchester, heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, a name synonymous with death on the battlefield and the expansion of the American West. The Winchester rifle, often called the gun that won the West, was responsible for countless deaths, and Sarah, whether by guilt or by supernatural influence, came to believe that she was being hunted by the spirits of the fallen. Her infant daughter died in 1866, followed by her husband in 1881, leaving her devastated and alone, but not without a staggering fortune. Seeking answers, Sarah visited a spiritual medium in Boston, desperate for relief from her suffering. What she was told would change her life forever. The medium claimed that Sarah's misfortune was no coincidence. It was a curse. The spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles wanted vengeance, and if she did not appease them, they would claim her life next. The only way to escape them, the medium warned, was to build a house that would never be finished, a house that would never stop growing. As long as construction continued, she would be protected. Sarah took the warning seriously. She left everything behind and traveled west to San Jose, California, where she purchased an unfinished 8-room farmhouse. Then, the madness began. Carpenters worked in shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for nearly 4 decades. The house expanded endlessly, turning into a bizarre, disorienting labyrinth. Staircases led nowhere, doors opened to brick walls, windows were built into floors, some rooms were sealed off completely, their purpose unknown. No one ever found blueprints for the mansion. Sarah gave instructions as if guided by something unseen, making sudden changes at a moment's notice. Some workers claimed she communicated with spirits during her midnight seances, taking their guidance on how to build next. Others believed she was trapping spirits inside the house itself, using the nonsensical architecture to confuse and contain them. Over the years, rumors grew darker. Workers vanished overnight, never seen again. Servants reported whispers from empty rooms. Some claimed to see shadowy figures moving through the halls. Disembodied footsteps echoed down corridors where no one was walking. The house seemed alive, shifting and breathing like an entity of its own. Then came the earthquake. In 1906, the San Francisco earthquake struck, violently shaking the Winchester house. The upper floors crumbled, entire wings collapsed, and Sarah herself was trapped in one of her rooms for hours. When she finally emerged, she was terrified. She ordered an entire section of the house to be sealed off. Forever. The spirits, she believed, were angry with her. Dozens of rooms were left abandoned, hidden behind walls, their contents untouched for over a century. Sarah Winchester never stopped building, but in 1922, death finally came for her. She passed away in her sleep at the age of 83. The moment her death was announced, the hammers fell silent. The workers who had spent decades building put down their tools and walked away. The house remained frozen in its unfinished state, a place of endless halls and unsolved mysteries. Today, the Winchester Mystery House is considered one of the most haunted locations in America. Cold spots, unexplained footsteps, and ghostly apparitions have been reported throughout the mansion. Some claim to have seen Sarah herself wandering the halls in mourning, forever trapped in the house she built to keep the dead at bay. But the question remains, did it ever work? Or are the spirits still waiting for her? The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. In the quiet countryside of Norfolk, England, stands Rainham Hall, a grand estate that has stood for centuries. It is a place of wealth, power, and scandal, but most of all, it is a place of unrest. Within its halls walks a woman who should not be there, a spectral figure in a flowing brown dress, her face obscured by darkness, her empty, hollow eyes staring straight into the soul of those who dare to see her. She is known as the Brown Lady, and her presence has been terrifying visitors for nearly 3 centuries. The story of the Brown Lady begins with Lady Dorothy Walpole, sister of Robert Walpole, Britain's first Prime Minister. Dorothy was born into a life of privilege and influence, but her fate would be anything but fortunate. She was beautiful, charming, and admired by many, but it was her love affair with Lord Charles Townshend that would seal her doom. Some say Dorothy and Charles had a passionate romance, but others claim she was forced into the marriage after an earlier affair with another nobleman. Either way, Dorothy became Lady Townshend, mistress of Rainham Hall. But Charles Townshend was not a kind man. He was known for his violent temper and cruelty, and his jealousy became an obsession. Rumors spread that Dorothy had been unfaithful, though there was no proof. Some say she had rekindled her affair with her former lover. Others claim it was merely a misunderstanding. But to Charles, it didn't matter. Enraged, he locked his wife away inside the mansion, forbidding her from seeing her children, speaking to guests, or leaving the estate. She was erased from the world, a prisoner in her own home. How long she remained locked away, no one knows for certain. Some say she lived out her days in sorrow, wandering the halls, calling out for her children, only to be ignored. Others claim she was murdered, either poisoned or thrown down the grand staircase, her body buried in an unmarked grave. The official records say she died of smallpox, but those who lived at Rainham Hall whispered a different truth, that she never truly left. It did not take long for the sightings to begin. Servants began to report strange occurrences, doors that opened and closed on their own, candles blown out by invisible hands, and low, mournful wails echoing through the halls at night. But the most terrifying encounters were those who saw her. She first appeared to guests of the estate in the late 1700s. A nobleman staying at the hall claimed he awoke in the middle of the night to see a woman standing beside his bed, her face hidden beneath a brown veil. When he sat up, she vanished. Another guest reported seeing her descending the grand staircase, gliding silently downward. But it was her face that truly haunted those who saw her, her empty glowing sockets where her eyes should have been. In 1835, a well-respected naval officer, Captain Frederick Marryat, decided to investigate. Skeptical of ghost stories, he asked to stay in the haunted room. One night, as he was walking down the hall with 2 companions, a door creaked open at the end of the corridor. Out of the darkness, a woman in a brown dress emerged, gliding toward them with a sinister grin upon her face. Marryat, terrified, raised his pistol and fired, but the bullet passed through her, embedding itself into the wooden door behind her. The Brown Lady never slowed, never reacted. She simply vanished. But her most famous appearance would come nearly a century later. In 1936, photographers from Country Life magazine were at Rainham Hall to photograph its grand interiors. They set up their camera at the foot of the grand staircase, adjusting the lighting for the perfect shot. As they prepared to take the picture, one of the men gasped, his face draining of color. He pointed at the staircase, eyes wide in horror. A figure was descending. A woman, her form transparent but unmistakable, was floating silently down the stairs. Her long brown gown rippled as if caught in an invisible breeze. The photographer snapped the picture, and in that instant, she disappeared. When they developed the film, they found the now famous image. The ghostly figure of a woman, hazy yet distinct, moving down the staircase as if stepping from another world into our own. The photograph became one of the most famous ghost pictures in history. Even skeptics struggled to explain it. Some claimed it was a trick of the light, a double exposure, or an elaborate hoax. But those who had seen the brown lady knew better. They had seen her empty, soulless eyes. Since then, her presence has never faded. Guests and staff at Raynham Hall continue to report strange activity, lights flickering, footsteps echoing down empty corridors, and the faint rustle of fabric moving through the halls when no one is there. Some visitors claim to feel a sudden, overwhelming sadness, as if stepping into her grief, her loneliness, her despair. The ghosts of Gettysburg Battlefield. The Battle of Gettysburg was one of the bloodiest and most pivotal battles of the American Civil War. Over the course of 3 brutal days in July 1863, more than 50,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or declared missing. The once quiet Pennsylvania countryside became a scene of unimaginable carnage, its rolling fields soaked in blood, its hills echoing with the screams of dying men. But when the battle ended, when the cannons fell silent and the bodies were buried in mass graves, something remained. Gettysburg did not forget. To this day, the battlefield is considered one of the most haunted locations in America. Visitors, historians, and even park rangers report unexplainable phenomena. The sounds of phantom gunfire, the cries of wounded soldiers, ghostly apparitions in full uniform, and the scent of gunpowder lingering in the air with no logical source. The spirits of Gettysburg are said to wander the fields, forever caught in a war that ended long ago. Some of the most chilling encounters occur at Devil's Den, a rocky outcrop where some of the fiercest fighting took place. Thousands of men clashed in hand-to-hand combat, their bodies falling between the jagged boulders. To this day, visitors report seeing a mysterious man in Civil War attire, described as having a wide-brimmed hat and bare feet. He often approaches tourists, offering cryptic directions before vanishing into thin air. Some claim to have captured his image in photographs, only to find the figure was never there when they took the picture. Others report hearing the sounds of muffled drum beats, distant shouting, and the unmistakable clash of bayonets in the dead of night. The triangular field, another infamous site on the battlefield, carries an equally terrifying reputation. Soldiers who fought there described it as a slaughterhouse, a place where no man could escape death. The ghosts of fallen Confederate troops are often seen marching in formation, their uniforms tattered, their faces locked in an expression of endless sorrow. Tourists have claimed that their cameras, phones, and electronic devices suddenly stop working when they step into the field, only to turn back on once they leave. Paranormal investigators have recorded EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, of voices crying out for help, calling for their mothers, or whispering prayers before death. Perhaps the most famous specter of Gettysburg is the Phantom Regiment. Dozens of visitors, including experienced Civil War reenactors, have reported seeing what appears to be a full battalion of soldiers marching in perfect formation across the field. The detail is extraordinary, their uniforms crisp, their muskets gleaming in the sun. But when the witnesses call out to them, they do not respond. They simply march forward, vanishing into thin air before reaching the tree line. Some have even approached what they believe to be reenactors, only to find the men suddenly disappear before their eyes. The hauntings are not confined to the battlefield. Gettysburg College, which served as a makeshift hospital during the war, is said to be rife with paranormal activity. The most terrifying story comes from 2 administrators who took the elevator down to the basement one evening, only to find themselves staring at a scene straight out of the 1860s. The doors opened, and instead of a quiet, empty basement, they saw a horrific war hospital filled with doctors in blood-stained uniforms, soldiers writhing in agony, and the smell of death thick in the air. The two administrators stood frozen, unable to move, until one of the doctors looked directly at them, and then, just like that, the vision was gone. But perhaps the most unsettling reports come from Little Round Top, the hill that saw some of the most desperate fighting of the battle. One chilling account comes from a group of Civil War reenactors who were preparing for a filming session. As they rested, a man in full Union uniform approached them, his coat ragged and dust-covered. He handed them a handful of musket cartridges, told them they would need these, and then walked away. Assuming he was another reenactor, they thought nothing of it, until they examined the cartridges and realized they were perfectly preserved, original Civil War-era rounds. When they turned back to thank the soldier, he was gone. Gettysburg is more than just a battlefield. It is a graveyard, a scar on history, a place where the past refuses to fade. The spirits of the men who fought and died there remain, reliving the horrors of war over and over again. Some call it a curse, others call it a reminder. But one thing is certain: when you walk the fields of Gettysburg, you are never truly alone.
Thanks for watching. Come back soon for more dreaded whispers. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.